Hello and welcome to Maths on the Move, the podcast from plus.maths.org. I'm Rachel Thomas.
And I'm Marianne Freiberger. Rachel, what do you think of when you think of a retreat?
You mean apart from just running away from something?
Yeah.
Well, I think I would like some yoga, maybe a spa day, something very peaceful and relaxing.
And what about a maths retreat?
Oh, yes, I'd love a maths retreat. What would that be all about?
Well, these things do exist. This summer, we witnessed the final day of something called Solve for X. And that's a mathematical modeling camp or a mathematical modeling retreat developed by the Martingale Foundation in collaboration with the Newton Gateway to Mathematics and the Isaac Newton Institute in Cambridge.
So I've heard of the Martingale Foundation. They provide funding for masters and PhD students, particularly focusing on expanding the socioeconomic backgrounds of people taking those kinds of subjects.
Yeah, that's right. And this modeling camp, Solve for X, is actually part of an entire program that the people who are funded by the Martingale Foundations, the Martingale Scholars, that is provided for them. And we'll find out a little more about Solve for X later. But before we talk to a couple of the participants of Solve for X, here's Chloe Seven, who's the communications manager of the Martingale Foundation, telling us more about what the foundation is all about.
So the Martingale Foundation supports a new generation of postgraduates to become STEM leaders. So we provide fully funded scholarships and access to a community of pioneering leaders that enable and nurture talented students to pursue masters and PhDs in STEM subjects at some of the leading research universities in the UK.
And who qualifies? I mean, who can apply for a scholarship?
So we are looking for individuals who have the desire and motivation to go on to postgraduate study and research. And we also look to fund people who are from low socioeconomic backgrounds or people who have or are currently facing financial barriers. And then in terms of eligibility, there's a couple of other factors, which are that in our recruitment rounds, the person must be ready to start a postgraduate degree in the year that we're recruiting, and also that they must qualify for home fee status at one of our partner universities in the UK. So that means primarily people who have studied in the UK or Ireland, but there are a couple of other factors, but not usually international students.
And how many do you recruit in a year?
It changes every year. So Martingale is a relatively new foundation. We were started just over 2 years ago. So we have 2 cohorts on the program at the moment, and we've just recruited our 3rd cohort. So the numbers change every year. In the first 2 years, we have about 50 scholars. This year, we're recruiting for masters and PhDs, so our number of scholars will go up. And we've also recently partnered with Google DeepMind to be able to provide scholarships in artificial intelligence. So we'll have a number of new scholars in that field as well. So watch this space for the final number of scholars coming this year.
Oh, that's exciting. And you said already that scholars will have access to a community. And there's also this event that happened earlier in the year that we're talking about today, Solve for X. What's that about? What's the aim, and what does it do?
Sure. So yes, the community and development program are a really important part of the whole Martingale Scholarship. So we We run a development program throughout the year where scholars take part in networking events, training events, socials, among a variety of other activities. And this culminates in Solve for X, which is a 4-day-long residential retreat hosted in Cambridge, which is where we met. And scholars join there in the summer, and they take part in a number of various different challenges, hands-on challenges, work together in groups, and then they present it to a panel of experts at the end of the week. One of the reasons behind why we know why we wanted to develop Solve for X was to help prepare scholars for a wide range of career paths. So we know that over 70% of PhD graduates leave academia within 3 years of completing study. And many of these graduates go on to really successful roles in industry, the private sector, and public sector. So that is part of the thinking about Solve for X. It's really all about where academia meets industry. So the real aim there is to give scholars a chance of solving a real world problem. They work with a mentor as well throughout the week, but also they're placed in groups that are not necessarily related to exactly the topic that they're studying. So it tends to be very interdisciplinary. And the whole idea is to challenge them, build skills, build those connections, and give them a sense of what that problem solving might be like in the real world.
And what do you remember most from the day? Like, what was your highlight? I mean, I'm talking about the day that I attended, which was the final day where everybody did their presentations. From that day or from the whole experience of Solve for X, what do you remember? What was fun? What was interesting?
Sure. Sorry. The main thing I remember is that it was one of the hottest days of the year, so it was roasting. But aside from that, I remember that once the scholars got into their groups and got, to introduce to their problem, everyone was just saying, hey, I want more time to do more maths. I want more time to work on this. So seeing people get really into the problem was phenomenal. And then the final day, the pitch event, was amazing to see everyone present their ideas and solutions to those challenges. So I had heard snippets throughout the week of what they've been working on and seen snippets of their presentation, as it developed, and then to see it come together all at the end, really coherent, amazing presentation skills. The problems that they had solved were phenomenal, really creative solutions. So it was just brilliant, the whole thing, seeing it come together.
So you talked to some of the Martingale scholars who took part in Solve for X in the summer?
Yes, I did. I talked to Alexandra Sorinca and Malachy Reynolds, who are both PhD students at King's College London. Now, as Chloe said, in the Solve for X modeling camp, participants were divided up into groups, and each group was given a particular mathematical challenge linked to the real world. And here is Alexandra telling us about the challenge that she worked on, which is all about pointing satellites in the right direction, and it turns out to be much harder than you think.
So our challenge was about pointing satellites. So basically, if we have a satellite somewhere in space, how do we make it point towards a targeted place on Earth? So for example, if we have a satellite that is somehow, if you could project it onto Earth, it would be above Paris. How do you make it point towards London? And we called our problem pointing satellites what on Earth, and we thought we were very funny with the name. But basically, we were only considering geostationary satellites, which are satellites that are always above a fixed point on Earth. So in this case, let's say the satellite is always above Paris. So it will travel at a speed directly proportional to the speed of Earth, such that it is always above Paris. And this seems like it doesn't seem like a very difficult problem, because you just think, oh, I can just calculate the distance between Paris and London, and then between the satellite to Paris, and then you can just do some algebraic multiplication, and you can find the distance between the satellite and in the target, which in this case is London. But the problem is that when you are communicating with a satellite, you are given the coordinates of the satellite in latitude, longitude, and height. Also, the coordinate of the reference point on Earth, which is in this case Paris, is also latitude, longitude, and height. And London is also in latitude, longitude, and height. And you don't think this is a problem, but latitude and longitude are angles, and it becomes increasingly difficult to work with angles in this case. So the problem arises in, I think, the problem is not solvable, but it's very suboptimal. So it would be very, very difficult for me to make the satellite point towards London if I'm using these coordinates. So basically what we did, we wanted to convert these coordinates into a coordinate system that is called Earth-centered, Earth-fixed. And it's basically an X, Y, and Z coordinate system. And we just do that by applying a linear map. And that linear map is a matrix that uses the angles of latitude and longitude. And it transforms the source coordinates into the target coordinates. And then it's easy to calculate this trajectory further on. So basically, that was the whole idea of the project. It was, of course, it was something that was already solved, but it was very nice to see how something so seemingly, I don't know, fancy. It's a satellite. We're doing fancy stuff. We're doing hard stuff in here. Can just be easy maths. It's just, I don't know, some matrices on a piece of paper and just trying to understand some angles, and that's it. It's almost undergraduate mathematics. I mean, of course, yeah, this little problem was undergraduate mathematics, but it was very, very, very nice to see how we can do something. We can approach something so fancy by using such little information, such little mathematical language. So yeah, that was the target, the problem.
And what was the experience like? How did you enjoy it?
It felt really nice. It was very interesting to have such a mixed kind of dynamics, because I feel like with mathematical problems, I mean with real life problems that require mathematical thinking, it's very easy to get very theoretical very, very, very quickly. So we needed to kind of stay a bit grounded and to really understand, like really digest the situation such that we translate it into mathematical language. And it was very interesting. I very much enjoyed it. I think this is one of the most beautiful aspects of the project, like actually bridging from a real life problem to maths. And that was my ultimate favorite part.
And what about Malachy? What challenge did he do for Solv4X?
So his challenge was very different from Alexandra's. It was very much more earthbound. Here he is giving a quick introduction.
Yeah, so I was in the group working on modeling business space occupancy in Luton. So basically looking at what are the trends in terms of businesses leaving or coming into Luton. And it's based on a data snapshot over 4 years from Luton Council.
Right, so I guess this is all about town planning, really. What kind of insights maths could give us into what happens in towns and why some areas thrive or become derelict. I suppose this kind of mathematical insights might help us stop this from happening.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe initially you would think that this kind of challenge is all about statistics. So you'd get lots of data about towns such as Luton, about the businesses there are and about businesses that go bust or the new businesses that come along. And then you crunch all these numbers, preferably on a computer, and you see what trends you can sort of spot. But quite interestingly, with Solv4X, the participants weren't actually allowed to do that, at least not initially. Before they could do some number crunching on a computer using statistics, They first had to come up with a traditional pen and paper way of approaching the problem. So that have another sort of way into the problem than just the statistics. Here's Malachy again.
So we had a kind of initial rule in our group, which was that we wouldn't use any kind of computing or programming for the first day. And this is kind of a rule I think that's implemented often at the like graduate modeling camps, which is sort of what the Solv4X model was based on. And so for us, because ours was such a computational project, this implemented a big reduction in what we could actually think about and what we could actually do initially. So it made us have to think outside the box to implement something that we could actually write down on paper instead of just going into the data initially and just crunching through the numbers. So the first approaches that we looked at were sort of graph theoretic. So we were looking at taking a particular business in a particular location and then mapping directly onto like a topographical map of Luton, and then looking at density of businesses, categories of businesses, connectivity between them, and trying to see, as snapshots evolved, what changes in terms of the landscape, I suppose, of businesses, based on a certain business leaving Luton or going under or having a new occupant. So our approach, at least at the beginning, was quite, network science adjacent or graph theoretic. Eventually, we were able to then, on the second day, start using computers, and it evolved from that graph theoretic approach to something that implemented statistics to do with the businesses themselves in conjunction with what we'd done previously.
So that's really interesting. Rather than just blindly processing the numbers, the Martingale scholars also had to try and find structure, some kind of structure within the problem they were working on to give them some important clues, some kind of mathematical insights. What did this combined sort of network theoretical and statistical approach tell them?
Well, they were able, for example, to trace the ripple effect that happens when a major business disappears because it goes bust or because of a global pandemic or something. Because obviously, when a major business such as an office block, when that goes, then this will eventually also affect the corner shops where the employees used to go to buy their things, or the cafe where they used to go and buy their lunch. And the work of Malachy and his team clearly sort of identified and indicated that effect. And of course, once you know that this effect is really there and you have more insight into how it's linked to the business that has gone bust and so on, then you can use that kind of knowledge to think of strategies to perhaps help prevent businesses going bust or to help them out. Now, Malachy seemed to enjoy his challenge very much, and I asked him what he enjoyed most about it.
Well, one thing I enjoyed, which I sort of didn't expect to, perhaps, was that this is a kind of project which is very far from the kind of research that I would do. And it was so far from it that it kind of pushed me out of any kind of comfort zone I had developed and made me think about things I really hadn't thought about for a while. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And also just being on the St. John's campus was amazing. I really, really loved just walking around and living there for only a couple of days, but it was great.
So what was your feeling, Marianne, about what it's like being a Martingale Foundation scholar?
Well, it seems that one of the main advantages is that community that Chloe had already mentioned. Here's Malachy again.
So I think the key advantage is we are already a group of people who've known each other for at least a year, who are all on the same track, from kind of a master's towards a PhD. And I guess the typical PhD or like postgrad route, you might have funding from some kind of funding body, which might be independent or might be a research council. And you may not know people going into your PhD who are in a similar position to you. It can be kind of isolating. Whereas as a Martingale scholar, you have all of these extra people already doing the same thing as you and maybe facing the same challenges as you. So there's already a community built up from that, which means you can ask a silly question that you might not want to ask your supervisor about, what does it, what kind of things I should be doing, what kind of people I should be talking to, what kind of things I should be aiming for. And you'll have a group of people basically thinking the same thing, and looking to ask that same question. As well as that, there are all of these, well, I guess Sol4X is a good example of the postgraduate development scheme that Martingale is putting on. So we have seminars and training sessions to do with, say, public speaking. We have the Sol4X, which was to do with problem solving for industry. And next year we'll have another one, which will be with an actual industry client. So we'll be working to do the same kind of mathematical modeling, but for them. Yeah, it reduces the isolation, I guess, of being a lone researcher or somebody who's just starting their PhD, and turns it into quite a communal and social thing.
Now, I also asked Alexandra how she became a Martingale scholar in the first place. And here she is with a very important message for those lecturers and professors and all others that supervise and mentor students.
Yeah, so I got to be a Martingale scholar by chance, I think. I had a very, very lovely supervisor in my second year. I did a little research project, and she was the one that encouraged me to apply. And I would like to tell this to maybe any academic, any professor. If you see like a little bit of a spark in a student, you just need to encourage them a bit. You don't even have to have like all of the talk of, oh, you should really do it. You can just send them an email. Oh, I think this might be suited for you. Or I saw this and I was thinking that you might apply for it. Because when you're someone my age, you get to doubt your abilities a lot, but you don't dare to doubt the decision-making of the people that you look up to. So when I saw my supervisor, that's this person that I really wanted to become, think that I would be a good choice for that. Although I doubted myself, I didn't doubt her. So I applied. So I would say that every professor and every person that's working with students should give it a bit of a push.
I really agree with Alexandra here about the importance of supporting and encouraging students. I think she put it really well. But how would you, if you were interested, how would you go about becoming a Martingale scholar?
Well, all the information about how to apply is on their website, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. But beyond the kind of bureaucratic processes involved, I asked Chloe what her advice for applicants would be.
I would say absolutely apply and start thinking about it over the summer and thinking about what you want to do. We often get asked, what are you looking for? What's the ideal candidate? And really, there isn't one specific type of person who is the ideal Martingale scholar. We have a whole range of candidates who bring so many amazing qualities to the cohort and the group. Obviously, we're looking for someone who's really interested in postgraduate research. So we want to hear about that passion, what you're interested in. But really what I would say is just back yourself to apply, get the application in, and trust your instincts, follow what you want to pursue, and try and get that to come across to us.
So for those that are interested in applying, the next application window will probably open in late August 2025. And the scholars that get funded, that get selected, they would start with their studies the following autumn.
That's it for today's podcast. If you've liked listening, please do consider recommending us to a friend. Otherwise, you could rate or review us in the app that you're listening to this podcast in. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.